Hello.
Salutations.
Welcome back to the Gilded Goss Podcast, the place for all your gilded scoop, from scandals to crime and spooky tales.
Spooky tales.
Let's hang out for a bit. It's me, Diana Palmer.
And me, Justin Palmer, your master of mayhem, your mistress of malevolence. Do you like that?
I do.
Does that work?
Yeah. In this episode, we're going to pick up where we left off with the conclusion of the Mrs. Astor scandal. And we'll end this episode with a spooky tale and a sneak peek into next week's devious scandal. The sources for today's episode are a Factinate article called Gilded Facts About Caroline Astor, New York's Mystic Rose by Dancy Mason, and the Smithsonian Magazine article by Karen Abbott titled The Fox Sisters and the Rap on Spiritualism.
Can I say that I've never heard the name Dancy before we started doing this show, and I think it's a cool name.
Yeah, it's cool.
Very cool first name, Dancy.
Now, last time, we were introduced to New York's Mystic Rose, the Mrs. Caroline Astor, and she had just won her latest social conquest, the battle for the Mrs. Astor title.
She beat her nephew, William Waldorf, out for the title because he wanted to be Mrs. Astor. I contend this for her.
Yes, heavyweight champion. She has a belt, whole 9 yards. Her nephew, William Waldorf, was furious that his wife, Mamie, did not end up with the coveted title. And he does get his sweet revenge. For not long after her victory, Mrs. Astor must acquaint herself with yet another new neighbor at her 5th Avenue brownstone. And that new neighbor was loud and dusty and terrible and an enormous construction site for what would become not simply just another stately mansion. Oh no. Instead, it was soon to become the famous and opulent Waldorf Hotel.
See, I thought that it was going to be like a loud and dusty guy, maybe named like Greg or something.
Was it Linus?
Yeah. Just tall but I guess it's a building.
And it towered over her posh brownstone, but that wasn't the worst part. You see, at this time, respectable society didn't meet in public spaces. It was all about invitations to lavish parties held at secluded private residences. This need for meeting spaces gave power to the hostesses of the time, like Mrs. Astor. And without that, who was she? And the exclusivity of it also served as a barrier where only the best of polite society was granted entry. But the Waldorf was gorgeous and regal and held the grandest balls.
And had one really big guy.
And side note, one of which was so grand that the cost of it would have fed and housed 1,000 working class families for a year. A whole year. So that's just a little commentary on the great chasm of the Gilded Age between the haves and have-nots, and it sounds really familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah, kind of like exactly how it is right now, all the time. It's bad.
So, William succeeded in casting a shadow on her home as well as her influence.
By having his tall friend Bruce stand next to it,
Yep.
Putting his shadow all over her house. Also the building he made.
Yeah, he hired Bruce to just follow her wherever she went.
Yeah.
Cast a shadow on her. She never saw sunlight again.
He was paid well, I think.
But our gal, she is not really our gal. She
Mm-mm.
didn't become the queen of New York society by rolling over and wallowing in defeat.
She rolled over and wallowed in mud, and then she got out of the mud and got herself cleaned up and did something else.
Dusted that mud right off.
Yeah.
No, the clever minx had a comeback for her dear nephew and his, quote, glorified tavern next door. That's what she called it, the Waldorf. Her carefully constructed counterattack began when she tore down her own beloved home. I mean, that's commitment right there. And she replaced it with big old stinky horse stables, which she deemed, a fitting companion to the Waldorf.
I have points to the contrary here. Horses are good.
Yes.
And maybe having horses next door was actually good, because then you can go pet a horse.
You can pet them, you can hug them, kiss them. They're best friends. But it didn't end there. She was like, these mountains of horse poop just won't do. That's not enough. She decided to fight fire with fire and built her own imposing and grand hotel right next to the Waldorf and gave it the family name.
Waldorfia.
The Astoria. An extra dig to her nephew, and it rivaled the Waldorf in every way.
He should have named his hotel the Mamie.
Oh, yeah. Caroline's victory whispered on everyone's lips, and ever the ungracious loser, William ran away to England.
This isn't fair. I imagine that's what he said, and that's exactly how he sounded. And he exclaimed that before he got on the boat to go to England.
Yeah. He became a citizen of England, but he was still the subject of American tabloid fodder, and he hated it. His solution, he would go on to have a peaceful and serene existence surrounded by all the luxury, friends, and finery his riches could provide.
That sounds really good. Like, it sounds like he made a good decision in the midst of a whole lot of tribulation.
Yeah, just kidding. He would fake his own death.
What? Unbelievable!
Outrage. He hastily devised a plan to have his servants just tell the press that he had passed away from pneumonia. Leave the scheming to the professionals, dear William.
Yeah, no, William? Yeah, no. He died yesterday from
What was it, William? Pneumonia?
it was pneumonia? Yeah. No, he's dead now. So sorry, I can't talk about him anymore.
And naturally, this ruse was immediately found out, and he was ruthlessly mocked in the papers. Backfired spectacularly. Meanwhile, back in the States, Caroline built another lavish mansion on Fifth Avenue on the Upper East Side, and she shared it with her son Jack and his wife Ava. And more on these two in a bit. In a strange turn of events, the legacies of William Waldorf and Caroline Astor would be entwined in the end as the Waldorf Hotel merged with the Astoria to become the
Waldorfia.
Yes, the Waldorf Astoria in 1897.
To be changed to be called Mamie's Place in 1896, but then they changed it again to Waldorf Astoria.
I guess, which is now where the Empire State Building sits. Caroline suffered from dementia in her 70s, but she still put her best face forward in society. She passed away in 1908 at the age of 78, and her daughter Carrie had a 39-foot tall monument erected in a cemetery off of Broadway and Wall Street in her honor.
That's something that people didn't know. That's why he had to get Bruce in there, because Caroline was actually 39 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
And so he had to get an equally large or larger person to cast a pall on her existence.
But it's Caroline's legacy that will face the next scandal, and it will be the scandal to finally sully the Astor name. Just a year after the death of his mother, 47-year-old Jack shocked the polite society his mom held so dear by announcing his divorce from Ava. Aghast. This left everyone aghast.
I don't know, I feel like it's not surprising.
Then he immediately announced his intention to marry Madeline Talmadge Force, who was a mere 18 years old. And New York society could not get over the 30-year age difference.
I, too, cannot get over the 30-year age difference. But I can see marrying into a family with the last name Force, because that's a cool last name.
Yeah, it's like Storm. To escape the ire brought on by the scandalous pairing, Jack and Madeline went on a honeymoon in Europe, where they stayed to wait out the storm.
I think that probably worked.
That's what I'd like to do.
I mean, I know I go to Europe every time I'm feeling the heat.
Yeah.
From the latest scandal that my family has sort of pushed onto the world with our weird behaviors.
Every time we're in the tabloids.
Yeah.
In the spring of 1912, Jack and Madeline found out they were expecting, and they wanted to raise their child in the States, and they wanted their child to be born in the States. So they bought the best seats money could buy for their return trip to the U.S. 2 first-class tickets on the maiden voyage of the Titanic.
Oh, no!
This fateful decision brought a violent end to Caroline's legacy.
That's because Bruce was on the boat, and he beat the crap out of Jack, right?
No. On April 15th, 1912, as the Titanic was sinking into the depths of the frigid Atlantic Ocean, Caroline's dear son, Jack, loaded his pregnant wife into a lifeboat, and he was last seen calmly smoking on deck as the ship descended into darkness. His wife goes on to survive. And now we switch gears to how 2 teenage girls helped give rise to spiritualism in the 19th century. This is the story of the Fox sisters. One evening, in a farmhouse in Hydesville, New York, in March of 1848, 14-year-old Margaretta Maggie Fox and her 11-year-old sister Kate excitedly beckoned their neighbor over to check out this strange phenomenon occurring in their room.
Quickly, come see what's happening in our room. That's what they sounded like, okay?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Every night before bed, the girls would hear these odd raps on furniture and walls. The knocks seemed to have a pattern indicative of a seemingly otherworldly intelligence.
That's indicative of intelligence.
Their neighbors were skeptical, but were like, okay, well, let's hear this. As the girls huddled together in bed, their mother, Margaret, asked the mysterious presence to count to 5. And 5 raps sounded. She said, count to 15. And again the entity obeyed.
That's too many.
Then she asked it to tell the age of the neighbor. And the correct 33 raps followed. And finally she asked, if you're an injured spirit, manifest it by 3 raps. And 3 thuds filled the tense room.
Of course the spirit was injured, because you keep telling it to rap on stuff, and that takes a lot of energy.
Frightened, the Fox family fled their home, and the sisters went to live with their older sister in Rochester, New York. And as the Smithsonian Magazine article states, Rochester at this time was, quote, a hotbed for reform and religious activity. In the same vicinity, the Finger Lakes region of New York State gave birth to both Mormonism and Millerism, the precursor to Seventh-day Adventism.
We're popping out religions over here. If you want to come down, you can get yourself a new religion.
The community was ripe for a mystery like this. They soaked it up, loved it. The community leaders, Isaac and Amy Post, were intrigued, and there was a rumor that the spirit belonged to a peddler who had been murdered in the farmhouse 5 years prior.
Curious.
Hey, maybe it was that man I murdered.
Yeah.
After the sisters successfully demonstrated their ability to speak to spirits at a gathering at the Post home, the Post rented the largest hall in Rochester and hosted a crowd of 400 people to witness the mysterious noises. And afterward, Amy Post took the girls aside and had them disrobed and examined them and found no evidence that this was a hoax.
Nope. We're calling it there. You're not disrobing children to discover whether or not they're pulling a hoax.
Yeah.
We're not doing that, and you did it, so you're bad. Officially, they're bad.
So let's get into the spiritualism of it all and how it connects to the Fox sisters. So communicating with spirits was not a new idea, as the Bible contains many references of angels communicating with humans. But modern spiritualism was born of a few distinct revolutionary philosophies.
It was keto and intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
And
hot yoga.
Hot yoga was part of it. I think that's called Bikram yoga or something. That's it.
Franz Anton Mesmer was a German healer whose ideas and practices became popular in America in the 1840s. He believed and he taught that everything in the universe, including the human body, was governed by a, quote, magnetic fluid that could become imbalanced and cause illness.
I'm full of magnetic fluid and I can attest to this problem of imbalance.
Your magnetic fluid has been causing you so much trouble lately.
Yeah.
He would have patients lie down and he would wave his hands over their body, rendering them into a mesmerizing, hypnotic state, which would allow him to, quote, manipulate the magnetic force and restore health.
I'm moving your body juices around.
Healthcare was just so much easier.
Hey, come over here and lay down. I'm going to move your body juices so you feel better.
Amateur mesmerists became a popular attraction at parties, and some would even attract paying customers. And some of these paying customers would claim to have had visions of spirits upon waking from a trance.
No, that was just a guy hovering over them.
Around the same time, the ideas of Emanuel Swedenborg, a Swedish philosopher and mystic, became popular. He believed that the afterlife consisted of 3 heavens and 3 hells with an interim destination.
I want to know all about these different heavens and hells. Why are there so many? What's different about them? Like, first heaven, that's candy heaven. Second heaven, that's laying on a good mattress. Third heaven,
Puppy heaven.
Puppy heaven. Clearly.
The interim destination is a spirit realm where everyone went immediately after dying. It's the waiting room. It's the green room. It's like you're waiting to go to your spot.
Right.
Love for oneself drove one toward the varying levels of hell, while love for others delivered one to heaven.
I like this message. I think it's correct.
He also claimed to have spoken with spirits on all realms. He was like super popular in the spirit realms.
I'm telling you guys, I speak to spirits on all realms at all times.
And it was the American seer Andrew Jackson Davis who would combine the two ideologies after Swedenborg's spirit supposedly spoke to him in a series of trances. Davis recorded the content of these messages in an 1847 book called
The Principles of Nature, Her Divine Revelations, and a Voice to Mankind.
In it, Davis says,
It is a truth that spirits commune with one another while one is in the body and the other in the higher spheres. All the world will hail with delight the ushering in of that era when the interiors of men will be opened, and the spiritual communication will be established.
Davis believed his prediction had come true a year later when the Fox sisters channeled spirits in their bedroom. In his diary, he wrote,
Dear Diary, about daylight this morning, a warm breathing passed over my face, and I heard a voice, tender and strong, saying, Brother, the good work has begun. Behold, a living demonstration is born.
Davis invited the girls to New York City to witness their medium capabilities for himself. And once he joined forces with the sisters, his status was catapulted from just an obscure prophet to the leader of the mass movement known as spiritualism.
Yeah, just another example of some adult person taking advantage of children for their own enrichment. And we're not going to talk about companies that may do this, but I think everybody knows what we're talking about.
By the 1880s, there was an estimated 8 million spiritualists in the United States and Europe. That's a lot. The girls went on a tour to spread the word of spirits, visiting Cleveland, Cincinnati, Columbus, St. Louis, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia,
Zanzibar, the
Narnia,
Lake Titicaca, and the Alamo.
Despite their popularity, they weren't always welcomed warmly. In an 1850 issue of Scientific American magazine, the girls were referred to as the spiritual knockers from Rochester.
That's rude.
Decades go by, and as their popularity dwindled, Maggie and Kate Fox fell on hard times. Maggie eventually married, and at the urging of her husband, she converted to Catholicism. But after her husband's death, she began drinking heavily. Kate married a devout spiritualist and went on to have a very successful career as a medium. She put on flamboyant shows, and they would result in the summoning of apparitions. But the intensity of it all wore on her, and she too began to drink.
I was trying to think of a way to make a joke about that, but I guess I can't.
No. Then, on October 21st, 1888, an interview is published in the New York World detailing Maggie's upcoming appearance at the New York Academy of Music, where she would publicly denounce spiritualism. She was paid $1,500 for the exclusive. So, $1,500 in 1888. Adjust for 2024.
It's like 200 grand.
Nope. Close is 48,000 now.
That's not close at all.
So just imagine, getting the equivalent for an interview.
Heck yeah, man. Spiritualism isn't real. Someone pay me $48,000.
Here you go. The Fox sisters got on stage and declared that it had all been a hoax. They just wanted to frighten their mother, and their ruse got out of hand.
I maintain a ruse getting out of hand is the neighbors coming over, not going on a national tour about your big psychic powers.
They explained that the rappings had been the sound of them cracking their joints in their knuckles and toes. Sometimes they would tie an apple to a string and move the string up and down and make the apple thump on the floor.
How did no one find the apples? That's my question. They looked for the apples and they didn't find them.
Where were the apples? However, their spiritualist followers claimed that the admission itself was a fraud for monetary gain, as the sisters were in need of money. And 1 year later, Maggie recanted her admission, claiming her spirit guides had beseeched her to do so.
I don't like that. Stick with your story.
Both Fox sisters passed away in poverty in the 1890s.
That's not cool.
No.
That's not as fun.
But it gave credence to the theory that maybe they did that just for the money, And in 1894, children who were playing in the old Fox family farmhouse did indeed find the skeleton of a man in a crumbling wall of the basement.
Oh my goodness. You know, someone should definitely do some forensics on that.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, listen, if you're going to tell people that you're communicating with a spirit that died in your house, doesn't it behoove you to put a spirit in the house?
I guess so. Join us next week to hear the scandalous tale about an actress, a millionaire, and a murderer.
These things always go together.
They do. As always, we value our gossers' feedback. If you have any comments, concerns, corrections, or ideas for upcoming episodes, contact us at gildedgoss@gmail.com.
Get at us.
You can also follow us on Instagram at Gilded Goss Podcast to see pics of the characters we talk about. Until next time, farewell, my little cabbages.
It's time to face the corn.